Max, we got Prashant on the line here. What do you want to ask him about real estate?
In terms of deal flow, how do you get brokers to take you seriously before you've done your first multifamily deal?
One thing is very important is when a broker sends you the deal, you just don't send the LOI to them. You get back to them within 24 to 48 hours, along with a request to have a conversation to review your underwriting with them. So the broker knows that you are serious. That's one thing, which has helped me a lot. Second thing is, when you send a resume, you put an advisor name along with that, and this is the advisor's experience, and we too are doing this deal irrespective of what advisor is part of the project or not. That always helps.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Four Oaks Capital. I'm super excited for today's show. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes. We have two amazing guests here on the line with us. We've got a man with a ton of experience in this and other businesses, Prashant Kumar, and a very motivated, aspiring investor, Max Harkavy. So first, I'll introduce you to Prashant. He has a technology and management background and has built a personal real estate portfolio of about 100 units of single and multifamily assets. To date, he's been involved as a general partner in numerous apartment complexes with over 1,200 units under management. He's also interested and has purchased a handful of assisted living facilities and plans to continue both multifamily and assisted living in the future. So that said, Prashant, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate coming on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So let's do this. Let's talk about your background first, who you are and what led you to investing in real estate and then apartments.
So Brian, as I say, I come from a very humble background, way back from India, right? I mean, although my education has been in one of the top tier institutes in India, I came here in the United States in about 97, 98 time frame, with about $100 in my pocket. Ever since then, I have worked in technology and management jobs all across the world, all across the country, managing hundreds and thousands of people, um, while doing across the globe, managing hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of people across the globe. But while doing that job, I always thought that if I don't do it, what happens?
Yep.
Because that happens, you don't work, you don't get paid.
Mhm.
So I was always trading time for my money. It was sort of a golden handcuff. I couldn't quit my job, and I couldn't move away. So if I was sleeping, I was not making money. So the point I'm trying to communicate is I always had it in my mind, but I never took a step. But one day, my brother-in-law, he said, Prashant, you have to buy some single families with me. He has been buying some.
Mhm.
I started buying with him. Not with him, he asked me to buy one, and then I bought two, and then I bought three. Then I realized it's not worth, my time. It takes 3 months to buy one single family, 2, 3 months, and
Mhm.
banks take forever to
Mhm.
sign that loan, that $100,000 loan, which I can probably cut a check, but I didn't want to do it because, of course, for the leverage reasons.
Yep.
I said, maybe you have to jump into multifamily, something more scalable. So
Mhm.
within that year itself, single family to I went into multifamily. I bought a multifamily, but the first multifamily was awesome. I closed it in 18 days. I had to write only one letter to the bank, my PFS and my SREO, and they closed it, and I was like excited, super excited.
Yeah.
A long story short, I realized that it's not going to work long because money is going to dry up. I keep buying these multifamilies. I wouldn't have enough money. So then, I started learning about syndication.
Mhm.
I started jumping into onto the plane and going all these conferences. Before COVID, that we used to have those conferences which we miss nowadays.
Yep.
So I've been going there like 7 of them in a year, like 2017, 18 time frame.
Mhm.
I said I have to do syndication. That's something which I wanted to do. I did my first syndication with a group 500 units. I mean, it took time for us to do it,
Mhm.
but eventually the results were fruitful, right? So that's how my journey started basically. So one syndication after another syndication. I mean, I've not done many. I've done
Mhm.
only 4 or 5 of them. One of them I have flipped I mean, I'm done. I'm out of it. A couple of
Yep.
them I'm still in. But that's my background basically. I come from a very strong technology and management background. I do a lot of, I know, I mean,
Hmm.
my skill set is, I can manage things very well, underwriting and all that stuff from an apartment perspective. But I wanted to, as I said, I wanted to develop something where I can quit my job. I have not, I have not left my job yet. I plan to quit it. I wanted to do it in 2020 and I did that, but of
Hmm.
course, nothing was going on in the real estate world, so I had to go back.
Yep.
I said you have to go back. So now the plans have shifted for another year.
Yeah.
So goal is to get out of my job. It's such a golden handcuff to me. I get paid a lot,
Yeah.
because of my skill set. It's sort of a golden handcuff. I have to get to that level, and then I hopefully I can quit.
Yeah,
So
a lot of real good things you mentioned there, and you summarize a Warren Buffett quote up front. If you don't learn how to make money while you sleep, you're going to work until you die, I think is the exact quote. But I think that is a common thread among everyone who makes the switch from a W-2 job to investing in apartments. And that's one of the keys here is real estate will allow you to make that money while you sleep. Something else you brought up is just you contrasted getting a loan for a single family home and getting a loan for a multifamily property. And I was also completely blown away at the difference in signing it. I mean, you said you sent them over your SREO, which is a statement of real estate owned, and your personal financial statement. And you probably signed one or two documents and that's it. I remember signing my first mortgage for a house. I probably had a stack, 2 inches tall where I had to sign or initial almost every single page. It's just one of those, it's a whole different ball game. And scaling with multifamily, which is what you found out, it's so much easier to scale with multifamily than it is with single family for many reasons. It's buy one, get X amount, or the loans are easier, or anyway, lots of goodness packed in there. So 2021 is going to be the year you quit your golden handcuff job for the rest of your life, right?
that is my goal. I mean,
Uh-huh.
right now that's my goal. I mean, I probably can quit, sometime mid of the year, but I don't want to announce it as yet. But
Hmm.
I'm moving in that direction.
Nice. Well,
Moving in
I'm
that.
in a similar position, except I've announced it. I've announced it, far and wide. I'll be retiring. I'm active duty Marine Corps. Most people who listen to the show know that, but I'll be retiring after 20 years on October 31st. With all the vacations that I've built up, I've
Mhm.
got 233 days left. So I mean, I've announced that far and wide, but anyway, that's something that, hopefully, right around middle of July, we can both, get on a call together and congratulate each other for quitting
Sure.
our W-2s.
I would love that. I mean, on the other hand, the reason is I'm not a W-2. I'm a private contractor.
Right.
And
Okay.
as
Good.
a
Good.
contractor, as I said,
Mhm.
I always get paid like very handsome money in
Mhm.
technology world. How much
Yep.
probably people get paid. And when we don't work, like during Christmas or Thanksgiving, when we don't work, we don't get paid.
Hmm.
So you kind of feel that you are trading your time with the money.
Yeah.
If I get sick, I don't get paid. I
Mhm.
mean, there is no residual value left in my experience.
Yeah.
If I'm not billable, I'm I'm not getting paid. So that was something which was always there at the back of the mind. And there is a deeper why, which we will discuss a little
Mhm.
bit later into the episode.
Yeah.
I wanted to free up my time to do what I really wanted to do. And with this job, working from mornings 8 o'clock till evening 8 o'clock, even though I get paid for 8 hours only, that doesn't leave much time for what you really want to do, in
Yeah.
your life. So that's the primary reason. And in addition to that, I started doing some, and I'm continuing a little bit more on my background. I
Mhm.
started doing some assisted living facilities also,
Mhm.
because that is my real passion. Is as I said, I come from a very humble background, very close knit family. My grandparents are with me. My parents are getting older now. So there is some element to serve elderly, to
Mhm.
provide some elderly care, and that's the reason I'm getting into this it is a business, but yes, I'm buying few assisted living facilities, trying to help where I can, and hopefully make a difference to elderly residents in my care homes.
Nice. Yeah, that's important. And there's a growing number of people who will be, retiring and eventually moving into assisted living centers soon. So, I mean, my dad's in his 70s. I mean, he's still perfectly capable of, taking care of himself, but it's a matter of 10, 15, 20 years before, that happens with him. But well, good. Now, something else that you mentioned that I kind of want to unpack is, whether you're on a contract getting, W-2 income or contract income, if you get sick, or if you don't work, you don't get paid. And it's something that I've reflected on lately is the fact that how insecure that income really is, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. I know in my life, I clung to that income a lot, thinking that income stream is keeping me alive without realizing that, making yourself 100% dependent on that income stream is actually much less secure than most people realize. So, end of the day, building income, building passive income, building assets that are going to create residual income is something that you've been working on. So you can get the key to that, those golden handcuffs and move on. So, well, good. Well, that said, we already talked a little bit about your why. Let's just flesh that out completely right now. So, what is your motivation? Just as complete as you want to go with that. Your motivation for what you do.
Okay, all right. So basically, I personally am a meditation instructor. That is something which I have always loved in my life. I I meditate a lot and I help others to meditate too. And it's all voluntary, there's no money charge or anything like that. That's my passion. I started meditating when I was probably 18, 19-year old. And for the last 25 years, I've been meditating, and I have a group of people, I help meditate, I conduct meditation sessions. It's all free of charge. So to me, that's the real cause. I mean, I would quit my job, in like that, if I have enough people to, to be able to kind of impart what I can impart,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of peace, the content in their heart, right? I mean, that's what I learned, and that's what I have. I want to teach basically that.
Yeah.
So that's, and with this job, yes, I do it. I mean, after 8 to 8 work or 8 to 6 work, I spend good 10 to 15 hours a week helping, or
Mm-hmm.
doing what I really love doing. But time is still limited, right? You have a family, you have to, take care of everything. There's not much left.
Yeah.
So that's my real why. Once I'm financially free, that's what I want to do in my time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm in multifamily. Yes, I'm a businessman, but I can still steer my time the way I want to do
Yeah.
things. Morning, evening, afternoon, whenever I want to do it. Right? I
Yeah.
can travel the world and still be able to do what I want to do. So
Yeah.
that's the real passion behind. That's the deepest why I have in my mind is, if I'm able to quit, if I have the enough residual income, then I can steer my time the way I want to allocate to different things.
Yeah.
So,
And once you're financially free, that's going to unlock, 40 to 60 hours a week that you would have spent earning money, to be able to provide for that families and provide for, your living expenses. So yeah, I think that's everyone has a slightly different why, but I think the ultimate goal is the same, to be able to get to that point to where we can pursue what makes us happy. And
yeah.
for you, it's teaching other people something that you found that has brought you, I think the word you said, like an inner peace, the meditation. So that's amazing. Really good, really good. So all right, let's talk a little bit about some of the specific deals or projects you've done with apartments, and up to you whether you give us an investment philosophy overall, or if you want to just talk about one specific complex you guys have done.
See, I would say is, as I said, my goal was to create a residual income. So
Hmm.
I started buying so that I can get some income out of it. But then I went into syndication, right? I mean, I have two apartment complexes, about 100 units that give me some residual income. Then I realized, I have to do syndication. I started doing syndication one after another. But the first syndication is what I really want to talk about. The first one was the most difficult one.
Always
Um,
is. Yep.
but it was actually a difficult one. It was,
Hmm.
65% occupied,
Hmm.
30% down units, and 5%, 10% economic vacancy. So all in all, about 50% economic rents that we were collecting.
Hmm.
Others were flooded or whatever. So it took us a good amount of time. Our philosophy was, my philosophy was never say no. That's how I
Hmm.
started into this. I got into a group, and they needed help, like real serious help, and I became partner in the group. I said, listen, I'm gonna just do it irrespective of whether I get anything out of it or not. So I started helping them out. I mean, they had the deal, but you are talking about money raise. You are talking about
Hmm.
talking to the lenders, negotiating with the lenders, negotiating with the property managers, visiting the property, doing the due diligence. I mean, it was a tough deal.
Hmm.
We had at least three lender retrades.
Mm.
Three lender retrades. I mean, I had my personal money hard, bunch of money. I'm talking about 250, 300,000 in your first or second syndication hard
Wow.
your personal money, and we just kept on working. I mean, finally, we found, even after all that, we were a little short, so we had to go to an equity partner, private equity firm. They decided to give us some money. Long story short, 5 months into the contract, after two extension, three extensions, the night before, we were bought out.
Hmm.
So that was like, you have worked so hard, you have created this deal,
Hmm.
you have put together everything on a silver platter, but we were bought out the night before the closing. Our equity partner said he didn't want to do the deal, and we
Yes.
had no extension left, nothing, and he said, if you think it is appropriate, I will do the deal by myself.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, we had no option. We had to say, okay, you do the deal yourself. And he was good, that he
Hmm.
he paid us, our hard money. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking
Okay.
to you. It was
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I mean,
it was
interesting.
like,
So the equity partner bought you out of the deal, but you got your hard money back. You didn't lose money, but you gained an education.
yes.
It sounds like wow. I mean,
I get
that's
Yeah.
wow.
I gained so much education out of it. I
Hmm.
can do. I mean, I don't want to brag, but I can do any deal. I mean, I can write a book,
Hmm.
easily, and with all the experiences that I had, with so many lenders, property managers, due diligence, you name it. We had gigabytes worth of data
Yeah.
that we had created during that time frame. Uh, but I mean, the fact that I was saying that I would not say no, because of
Hmm.
that, even though we came out of this deal and we made a little bit of money,
Hmm.
the guy was gentle enough that he paid us 1%.
Hmm.
We made some money. It's not, I have to be honest on that. So we made some money. So right after that, within 30 days, we got another deal,
Nice.
similar
Nice.
size. We wouldn't make that much money in that, but maybe we'll make 25% out of, as compared. But we did the second deal, and then
Hmm.
I had another deal after like 3 months.
Yep.
So that kind of opened up the gates for us. uh, you know
Yeah, I saw the same thing happen with us. I mean, our first deal was definitely our hardest. Yours takes the cake. I mean, I can't quite compare with that one. The big hiccup we had was the spread on Fannie and Freddie loans at the time jumped. They had come up to the end of their fiscal. They had a fiscal year cap, and anybody who's familiar with the Fannie and Freddie, it's federally regulated. So
yeah.
lenders can only lend so much under the Fannie and Freddie program, and both programs were right at their cap. And so the lenders pushed back and said, okay, in order to slow things down, we're raising our interest rates. And so over a 3-day period, we lost, $600,000 in loan proceeds that we had to come up with, and my goodness, it was one of those things where compared to what you're talking about, it makes that sound like it's child's play, but we had to raise, within a couple of weeks, a lot more money than we thought we did, and ended up getting it across the finish line. But wow, but yeah, end of the day, looks like you made probably more money in the education you received going through the process than that 1% fee,
Yeah.
which is end of the day just as important, I think. So
Yeah. Basically, you end up learning when you work on a deal. I mean, I
mhm,
know we have a bunch of people who try to teach things, but the real knowledge is gained by working on the deal, and that's
mhm,
what my goal to get into this deal is. I will do whatever needs to be done.
okay,
And I did that, like 4, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. I
mhm,
was helping. Plus, my net worth was good enough. I was able to put in money. So GP, LP, KP, DP, whatever you can
yeah,
call it, I was doing all that. I was vested in the deal basically.
mhm,
We had to do it. It just did not work out in the end. The last night before, we could not raise another 3 million by the morning.
no, no, yeah,
So it was not going to happen.
yeah,
So we took our we just backed out. We say okay, whatever.
mhm,
And as I said, we got paid a little bit, but that kind of opened up the doors for us.
yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, and what you've done since, I mean, 1,200 and change units, that you're a GP on, that's a significant amount for anybody. We're looking at that number as maybe 1 to 2 years from now, but that's a really good track record that you have so far. Well, that said, what's next for you?
this year, of course, 2020 was bad for everybody, right? For
Hmm.
obvious reasons. But this year we had some goals. We could not meet them. We had few properties which we were underwriting, which were in contracts, which most likely were not. One was not closed. One is still in negotiations, and there were some assisted livings that we are trying to buy. They are under negotiations also. So the goal is continue the journey, basically continue the same journey, buy more assets, help more people on all fronts, those who are our investors as well as those who are residents in our assisted living.
Hmm.
Just continue to open up our minds and help, basically. I mean, money will come.
Yeah.
In my mind, as long as our intentions are open and humble, and we are willing to help others. That's what we are doing every day without any hesitation, so to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, we do meetups, we do webinars, things like that, education, uh, portals. We don't, no money is ever charged, so we're just continuing to do what we are doing
Hmm.
and hoping that our deal pipeline will start, will come back again.
Hmm.
Right now we are in sort of in a waiting mode, right, for next couple of months, because the way economy is, right, we are on the top. Basically, we don't know where we are going.
Yeah.
Uh, Properties are sold at 4 cap, 3.5 cap. I don't think we're going to buy at that price range, right? Unless we get a discount like 20, 30%.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen, because there are a lot of people out there looking for deals.
Yeah.
There's no hurry, but yes, I mean, that's our next. I mean, we don't know what is next, right? I mean, you really
Hmm.
don't know, but we are just continuing to put our efforts in the right direction.
Hmm.
Meeting people, nice people like you, and continue to educate the world and continue to get educated. While giving, I get back also. When
Yep.
I'm talking to you, I'm forming up my ideas in my head, what I
Mhm.
want to do next.
Yeah,
So,
one of my favorite quotes, and whether you call it karma or the golden rule, but it's a Zig Ziglar quote. You can have anything you want in this life by helping enough other people get what they want. So it's one of those, what goes around comes around philosophies. If you give freely to others, you'll get what you need out of this life. So very much appreciate that. And for you sharing your experiences with us today. But that said, let's shift gears a little bit. We've got Max Harkavy patiently waiting on the line here. And real quick, he's an active duty Air Force officer currently stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. He previously flew B-52s and is now an acquisitions officer working on the F-15 defensive systems for the Air Force. And he's transitioning now into a multifamily investor. So that said, Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to speaking with you, Prashant.
yeah, same here. First
Yeah,
of all, both of you guys, thanks for your service. For,
thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the support. Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, it means a
So,
lot.
yeah. So Max, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
So like you mentioned, I'm currently stationed at Wright-Pat, which is up in Dayton, which happens to be about 40 minutes north of where I grew up in Cincinnati. My family has always been in real estate. My dad has owned a property management company in the Cincinnati area for 30 plus years. And my uncles are in real estate. My grandfather was in real estate. I joined the Air Force because I didn't want to do the follow my dad's footsteps like he did kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna have my own adventure, join the Air Force. Definitely don't regret my decision, but knowing what I know now, would I do it again? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's circling back and now I'm ultimately following in my predecessor's footsteps and trying to get into real estate. And so it's funny to watch myself come full circle like that, but there's a lot of reasons why I want to get into multifamily, most of which you guys have already talked about. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell, basically.
I mean, it sounds like it's in your DNA, 2 generations at least that have all been into the real estate. And you said your dad was a property manager.
Yeah, he owns a property management company in Cincinnati. It's called Balanced Property Solutions. They mostly manage large shopping centers, and they recently, in the last decade or so, got into managing larger multifamily assets. And my dad actually sold a large percentage of the company to his partner to step away because he wanted to start actually acquiring more real estate himself instead of just managing it. So I've actually been trying to work with him a little bit to get some deals done because he's been in the game for so long and he knows so many people in the southern Cincinnati, Indiana, Kentucky area. He knows all the people. So it's been a struggle trying to get him to work with me because we're kind of on 2 different planes. He's older, he's made his money, he's not as motivated. I'm a lot younger, and I'm kind of pretty passionate about the finance behind this and how it all works. And but it's a struggle, but it's a good struggle to have because we're working together and good things will come with it.
Yeah, I know a lot of newer investors would be very envious of that position that you're in because a lot of people know, and Prashant mentioned it earlier, you have to get loans, you have to have experience, you have to have net worth and balance sheet, and your dad's been in the industry for so long that he'll be able to navigate that super easy. Whereas other people have to, when they're looking for partners and building teams, that's just one more person or one more hat to have to find somebody that can wear it. So
right.
Good for you. I mean, being in that area, there's a lot of markets, within a couple hours drive of where you're at right now that are actually doing very, very well right now. A lot of people who have come on the show and a lot of people that I network with have talked very highly about, the Columbus market, Indianapolis, and then getting into Northern Kentucky. I think Louisville is the city, Northern Kentucky, right on the border. Is that right?
Louisville. Yeah, there's Covington, which is right across the border from Cincinnati. And then south of that is Louisville, and there's Lexington as well.
Louisville and Lexington. Yeah, those are all cities that have pretty strong futures, as far as, what direction they're going. So good. Now, you said you went into Air Force to get your adventures. I imagine flying B-52s is quite adventurous.
I had a couple, yeah.
Yeah. What was it in your mind? I mean, you told us that initially you didn't want to follow your father's footsteps. You didn't want to go in real estate. You got into Air Force. What triggered that change in direction?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of different reasons that made me kind of circle back. One of the main ones is that I know that the Air Force thing is not a permanent thing. I have to do something after the Air Force. And like you guys were talking about earlier, being so reliant on that income. Yeah, it's very secure in the government. They can't fire you the next day and you'd be out of a paycheck. If they were going to fire me, it would take a while.
Yes.
So, I mean, you have that security net, but I've got 3 years left on my contract. And one of my goals is to try and replace as much as my Air Force salary as I can with passive apartment income, excuse me. And so the fear of not being able to support myself in 3 years is kind of making me, it's lighting a fire under me, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's what, and the other big reason is if you have a basic understanding of finance, you know that this asset class basically can't be beaten. I mean, it's almost as safe as gold and it pays you a return. I don't know the argument. I don't really know of an argument against multifamily that would hold up in my book. So,
and a lot of things there that are similar. I looked at the kind of burning the boats philosophy, myself. I about 2 years ago kind of looked at, just moving into a brand new area with a brand new job, and, very typical. I mean, I'm Marine Corps, you're Air Force. Our tours are almost 3 years on the dot, like clockwork,
Right.
And I think Air Force is similar. So I showed up here with 17 years under my belt, and I, for the first time, realized, oh my gosh, at the end of this duty station, I could potentially get out, retire, have a pension, and I made the same thing as you. I started planning and thinking, okay, I've got 3 years to replace my active duty income. All right. And Max, I'll tell you right now, you got 3 years, you can do it. It's achievable. All right.
Right.
This year I haven't quite replaced it, but we're well on track to have it fully replaced, in 300 and I forgot my count, 233 days left. Can't believe I messed that number up.
Everyone has the count. Yeah.
Yeah, but very, very achievable. All right, so let's you talked a little bit about your why, but let's dive into that a little bit deeper. What is your big burning why or your motivation for doing this?
So I guess it comes back again to the military thing. A few years after joining, and the novelty of flying airplanes kind of wore off, and it's like it's a lot of work. The pay isn't that great for what they're asking you to do, and you're always working for somebody, and you're always answering to somebody, and there's always someone. Every time you graduate from something in the military, I'm sure you've had a similar experience. You're the lowest guy on the rung. It doesn't matter if you're a lieutenant colonel or an 06 at the Pentagon.
Yep.
06s at the Pentagon make coffee for generals. So I'm like, it literally never ends. So I kind of decided that the best way for me to work on my own hopes and dreams in my life and my own aspirations is to be my own boss and make my own money, and not have to answer to anyone, save the wife.
Yeah.
So that's
the people that you choose to answer to, the people
Exactly.
you choose to be accountable to. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not someone who's arbitrarily placed over my head in a leadership role that I have to please all the time. So that's other than, it kind of being in my blood to be in real estate and be in real estate, like we talked about. That is my biggest reason is so I can have my own aspirations and do things on my own time in my own life and dictate it on my own terms. So
yeah, if that's important to you, living your life, dictating things on your own terms, I think I realized not too long ago that the military is just not compatible with that. It's just a friend of mine and I were talking last week about, being a commander, which is, lieutenant colonel. You've got about 15 to 18 years of commissioned service at the time when you get there. But when I was younger in my career, a lieutenant, maybe a junior captain, we used to look at that lieutenant colonel CO as almost a minor deity, you know what I'm saying? But, now sitting where I'm at, I just realized, they sit in a very small box with very little room to actually operate. But, it's one of those things that over the years, it's kind of, you get to peek behind the curtain and see. Anyway, it's a very, very rigid system. And yeah, anybody, I think a lot of people clash with it who can't quite, just buckle up and do what they're told. But anyway, we're getting on a tangent, but I could do a whole podcast episode just on that one subject. But
invite me to that one, please. I would love to be on that with you.
Yeah. So that said, let's get back to real estate here. And Max, we got Prashant on the line here. What do you want to ask him about real estate?
So I had a list of questions here, but one popped into my head that I didn't have written down when you guys were talking earlier. And you mentioned deals selling for 3 or 4 caps these days. I've also noticed a similar phenomenon in my market that I'm, the greater Cincinnati area. Do either of you anticipate, obviously there's going to be one, but I guess the more accurate question is, when do you anticipate the correction? And when that occurs, do you think that will be an opportunity similar to what I imagine 2008 was for people that are in our shoes right now?
So basically it is, patience is virtue, right? I mean, that is something that we have to realize. I know a lot of people who are sitting on the sideline with a lot of cash, and people will start making mistake. Those who are waiting, like me, I'm waiting. people will start making mistake. They will start jumping into the real estate sooner than when it is going to start falling apart, right? I mean, it's gonna it's not going to fall apart like what happened in 2008 2009 time frame, but chances are it's going to kind of plateau, maybe go a little bit down, or and then come back or whatever. It's not going to be going up all the time, right? Just practically
Right.
not possible, right?
Nope.
So the idea is, do you want to jump on the wagon now, or do you want to wait to jump onto that wagon? In my mind, unless you find a distressed asset yourself through your own effort, if you are going through a broker wants to sell you any property at the stabilized value. And at stabilized value, and there are a lot of people who are giving away their money.
Mhm.
Uh, and maybe I'm wrong, but my thinking is that unless you find a distressed assets where you can find it, you can get a discount of 10-15%. Time right now is not the right time to buy.
Right.
How long is going to be, nobody has a crystal ball. But as I talked to a lot of people like everybody does, and somebody was telling me that multifamily foreclosures have already started coming, and he buys foreclosures in Washington DC area. He said he saw 7 foreclosures in 1 week last week,
Ooh.
and he doesn't see that during the year. So I mean, things will change. Would they change drastically? We don't know. We know that nobody is pressed to pay their rents, like A-class tenant. Even A-class tenants are not paying rents right now. There are many
Yeah.
states, their courts are not giving the dates. So there's a deeper analysis of why would it happen? Because people are not pressed to pay rent, irrespective of whether they have in their pocket or not, and they will not be pressed to pay rent for next 6 months.
Right.
Who,
Because evictions are, yeah.
yeah, who's at loss? You and I are at loss. The one
Mhm.
who is the owner, landlord, is at loss. Whether you're a syndicator or a passive owner, you are the one at loss. So the day will come when this sinking feeling in your heart, these guys are not paying me the rent, will burst, and it will go into foreclosure. That's
Mhm.
when you will have an opportunity to buy those assets.
Yep.
When will that happen? I don't think it will happen in 3 months. It's just too short of a time. It will take maybe 6 months, or 9 months. That's
Right.
my gut feeling, and that's what I'm sharing. Maybe I'm wrong. I
Yeah.
don't have a crystal ball. So
Yeah. My crystal ball broke, so good question. About the low cap rates, we've had a historic period of very low interest rates, and interest
Right.
rates and cap rates are tied together. If you look at what's going on in Europe and in Eastern Asia, some of those countries have negative savings rates and negative interest rates for savings programs. And theoretically, cap rates can continue to go down in the US. I mean, right now our savings rates are low, but they're positive. All right. Zero is not, I mean, we're not looking at, positive numbers only. That number could get negative, just like it has in Europe and just like it has in countries like Japan. So can the cap rates keep going down? The answer is yes, they can. All right. Will they keep going down? I mean, if we're looking at our international counterparts as an example, I think they will still go down from here, but
Interesting.
like Prashant said, I don't have a crystal ball. And I also, that's one hand of the equation. The other hand of the equation, exactly what Prashant was talking about. There are economic cycles. Even though our cap rates can still come down, there are economic cycles that are affecting everything else that's going on. So, what's been consistent over time is that real estate does appreciate and it outpaces inflation. So when you look at that and you add the leverage back in, um, it's still a safe investment. There's timing that makes things easier and better for you. But so if you can buy at the right time and sell at the right time, great. But if you happen to buy at the top, you just have to wait a little longer for that top to come back up again. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of to follow on what what you guys were talking about earlier, there was a Warren Buffett quote spoken at one point, and what your answer to the question kind of brought that back up, Prashant, for me. timing the market is hard. And Warren Buffett, said, I think it was Warren Buffett said to never try and time the market. And so as a relatively inexperienced investor, I get all these deals sent to my inbox and I underwrite them. I go through the practice of, is this a good deal? I do market research in the area, and sometimes they pencil out, and most of the time they're junk. But I'm really eager to buy one, so it's hard for me to. It's that voice in my head saying, "Don't try and time the market. If the deal makes sense, buy it." So it's kind of like this eternal struggle I have, where it objectively is probably a bad time to buy for all the reasons you both stated. But I have a time limit, like we were talking about earlier as well, and I just want to. It's hard to know if this is the right one or not. I've actually just closed on my first deal I did by myself is a 4-family. Actually only 20 minutes or so from my house, but that, it's residential property, residential loan. So it's not really going to count towards anything and practically on paper for acquiring my first multifamily, but it was a good deal penciled out. So I bought it. And I guess that leads to my next question. In terms of deal flow, how do you get brokers to take you seriously before you've done your first multifamily deal? I seem to get only sent the things that have been passed over 150 times. I don't get the deal that could actually make sense. So how do you get the broker to take you seriously and send you something that you could actually buy?
See, one thing is very important is when a broker sends you the deal, you just don't send the LOI to them. You get back to them within 24 to 48 hours along with a request to have a conversation to kind of review your underwriting with them, right? So you are talking, broker has sent you a deal, you have done your underwriting, now you are asking broker, and it's just an example, right? I mean, there are many other things that we do. You discuss your underwriting, what is the basis of the price that broker is asking? Most of the deal don't ask for, now it's on the mark. So you kind of discuss your deal. So broker knows that you are serious. You have not just cut the LOI, just send the, LOI for the deal. That's one thing, which has helped me a lot, in my initial days. I would respond back to the broker, call him right away, and probably send him an email with my underwriting file. And listen, buddy, this is not working out. I mean, this is what I think should be the right price. So once he looks at once or twice with you, with that cycle, they start looking at you a little bit more mature person, because you are spending, they know, see, at the end of the day, they want to sell a deal. And if you are the first one responding to them with all the hard work, it is hard work, but eventually, they start looking at you that, yes, you want to buy. The second thing is, when you send a resume, you put an advisor name along with that in your resume, that, you have this much experience. You don't have to put your own deal because you have not done one. So it's not that you are faking or anything. It's just that you say, listen, this is my organization, and in my organization, this is the advisor. A lot of people do that, and this is the advisor's experience, and we too are doing this deal, irrespective of what advisor is part of the project or not. But that always helps. You have, so these are, kind of some tips to build your credibility. You are building a team. You are not going to buy it yourself. You cannot, I mean, I don't know about you, but I cannot buy $5 million deal myself.
One day. Yeah.
One day, yes, of course,
Yes.
and trust me, you can buy it after a couple of years. 5 million is not that big of a deal at least in multifamily. The other thing I was gonna say, that when I was listening to you being impatient, right?
Yeah.
You make a mistake in single family, you can survive that. If you make a mistake in multifamily, you buy a $2 million asset for 4 million, you are 2 million out of your pocket.
Yeah.
It's gonna take years before it comes to bank's loan will always sit there on your head. Bank will acquire that, take that property and run with it.
Yeah.
So try not, see, I'm the first example. I bought my primary residence in 2008 when it was on the top, right? It has never come there, but it doesn't hurt me because I live there, right?
Yeah.
Sell the house. It still cannot sell the house at the price I. But if I make a mistake in my multifamily, which I'm buying for myself, if I pay $1 million more if I pay 50% more on that big kind of but kind of an asset is going to sit on my balance sheet. I mean, banks are
Right.
going to ask for that money.
Yeah.
So waiting and treading your waters carefully is the game here, and that's why I keep saying, do not buy anything on retail price, buy it at a discounted price.
Mhm.
So you want to buy, I want to buy right away. There are a lot of impatient people, and somebody's going to make a mistake and they will suffer.
Yep.
So
That's good advice. Yeah.
tread your waters carefully. That's my, again, take it as a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
these are my comments on that point.
Yeah. So to follow on to what Prashant just said, there's a couple of golden nuggets there. Get back to the brokers quickly. Build your team. You have to have credibility before the brokers are going to keep sending you deals, and buy right. Incidentally, and this is very coincidentally, about 10 minutes ago, I just got a text from my partner. We just closed on a 167 unit apartment building.
Congrats.
And yeah, thanks. I mean, that's great news for us. It's almost doubles our portfolio size, but 167 units. But we bought at 7.1 million on a property that was appraised at 7.4 million 3 years ago.
Wow.
So being able to buy at a discount is absolutely crucial. I mean, don't not buy, but just do exactly what Prashant said. Make sure if you're buying right now, you're buying at a discount so that you have that buffer. So you're not sitting on a $1 million, you're not $1 million underwater. In our case, we're probably $1 million in equity right now, just walking into this.
That's great.
All right. So anyway, Max, you got another question?
Yeah, this could be directed to both of you as well. Did either of you have a mentor figure that kind of coached you through the first deal? And if so, how did you get that person to agree to be your mentor? That I'm finding that difficult as well. Everyone's like, find a mentor, find a mentor. I'm like,
Yeah.
How do you find one?
Yeah. Prashant, I'll let you go first on that one.
See, as I was saying that I did not have any like paid mentor, but I had mentors, in my career. Uh, the way I started was I started doing this deal. I said, listen, I just stumbled upon, and I said, listen, I'm gonna do it, and I helped that, and those guys were a little bit ahead of me, so they were sort of my mentor. While doing so, I was gaining knowledge from them, and my network kept on increasing. And one of the partner actually is one of the coaches in a different organization, and he's my partner. So to say, I'm lucky that he's there. It's always, and in your case, Max, your father, your family, your generation, you have mentors in your family itself. It's not
Right.
that you have. I mean, you have to see through them. You sometimes you said differently, but you have to see that the value that they bring to you is priceless. So your impatience is, your impatience and their kind of sitting back attitude, they have to kind of find a balance, and you have to get what you can get out of it.
Right.
Finding a mentor, I mean, yes, you can join any mentorship program, Rodcliffe, Joe Fairless, whatever. But the most important learning is when you are in a deal, when you are in, if you are want to be a syndicator, when you are doing a syndication, at that time what you learn, you will not learn anywhere else. You can watch my videos. I have a bunch of videos for that matter. There are tons of things. You can, Brian's podcast, you're learning, right? I mean,
Right.
this is learning process basically. So this is sort of a mentoring, but you have to do something unless you apply it, at least it doesn't stick to me. It kind of
Mhm.
comes and goes. Unless I apply that knowledge, it is useless.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, good luck to you. I mean, anything you need, I mean, from that perspective, I would love to talk to you and share my insights, anything that you need. And I would love to see if you find some deals in, I mean, I'm in the neck of the woods, by the way. I have properties in Indianapolis,
Oh yeah,
and
I saw that here. Mhm.
yeah, I look in Indianapolis every day. I talk to 5 brokers today. Also, so Ohio, I mean, I work in Columbus, even though I live in New York.
Okay.
I like that area very much. Would like to partner up, whatever, share my group. I have a group also. So you kind of develop your network, basically.
Mhm.
Right.
That's my thought.
If you ever need someone to go check out a deal for you in Indianapolis, I'm only like an hour and a half away. So if you need someone to drive out there and look at something for you, you can always reach out.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome. See?
Yeah. There you go. I
Yeah.
mean, you just answered your own question there. That's it. So how do you get mentors? I paid for a mentor because I was under the impression that I'd have a hard time finding a mentor, but really the key there's, I think, two keys in finding mentors. Number one is you got to network. All right. And number two, you've got to find a way to add value. There has to be value on both sides of the equation, and the more you network, the more you learn. I mean, the more you learn about the subjects and the more you're doing things, the more value you're going to be able to add to a potential mentor. So it's one of those where you've got to be working on both sides of the spectrum, networking, finding people with experience, building my own experience so I can be a good partner or I can attract a mentor, so,
Right.
I mean, for most, the easiest way, I mean, depending on your financial situation, the easiest way is to pay for a mentor, and there's lots of programs that'll do that. But the harder and maybe the more valuable way is, to keep on networking until you can, you keep on networking, keep on learning until something just happens. So, all right. That said, we're out of time right now. As much as I would love to continue the conversation, we're going to break it off here. But one question for both of you to finish up. And Prashant, you go first. How can our listeners learn more about you?
See, you see my name behind me, my
Yep.
company is My Realty Gains. So I have an email address, prashant@myrealtygains.com.
Mhm.
That's a simple website. There I have a 7-day email course for all the passive investors. There are a lot of people who do not know what a passive investment in real estate can do for you. To really know uh, the benefits of passive investing in real estate, specifically in multifamily, specifically in the assets where we do cost segregation, cash flow, depreciation, uh, you know, appreciation, you name it. I mean, these are the fundamental benefits, and a lot of people do not know about it, right? I mean, people think that they are giving money to syndicator. They are not giving money to syndicator. They are owning the real estate. They are part owner of a real estate.
Yep.
So all those benefits, satisfaction of owning the real estate, I have kind of put together everything into one 7-day email course. It's just 2 minutes of video per email, which kind of walks you through those benefits. Feel free to subscribe to that. Feel free to schedule a time with me on my calendar. My cell phone, 631-428-6479.
Easy.
I'm always there. I always pick up or text me. There are infinite ways to back me, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatnot.
All right. So that information is going to end up in the show notes. We got myrealtygains.com. You got the email address, and he gave his phone number out as well. So, feel free to contact him and definitely, sign up for that 7-day email course. That's it. Max, same question for you. How can people learn more about you?
Right. So I guess the best way to learn more about me and my background would be through my LinkedIn profile. Until I have reason to build a website, that's just going to be where that stuff lives. So LinkedIn, it's just Max Harkavy at LinkedIn. And then my email address is harkavym@gmail.com. And then you can also just feel free to call or text me, 513-462-8109. I'm always happy to learn more and help out other investors where I can and everything. So.
All right. And once again, all that information is going to be in the show notes. Reach out to him if you're a mentor that needs somebody in the, Columbus, Ohio area. He's your guy. So thanks so much, guys, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time today. And, I learned a lot. This was great.